That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.
Alright, here we are with Captain America, the Man Out of Time, which has a very clever cover on it. For those that don't get it, it's every president since and including FDR. So that's pretty clever. That's all the presidents he missed, including Obama's on there. So this is fairly new, I guess. I'm gonna take the dust jacket off just so I don't have it go all over the place. Never like it when it's just black on the inside like that. But so what this is it's a retelling of Captain America's, I guess you could call it his origin story, because that's what it's kind of become for him. Even though, Captain America has a different origin with the whole injected with the super soldier serum and all that stuff. That's like his A origin story, and then there's his B origin story, where he goes to fight where he's frozen in time, and then wakes up years later and ends up fighting the Avengers, or fighting with the Avengers. And really, it's only about an issue that the World War II stuff lasts, and in it we set up this idea of what does Captain America want? What does Steve Rogers want after he gets out of the Air Force, or after the war's over? And then he's like, seriously, it's only just a couple pages. Let's see here. That's it. That's all the World War II stuff. And then it's just right into the Avengers stuff. But what's really interesting about it is a retelling of the original story. It's not like they just took the beat of, okay, Captain America was frozen in ice, then he wakes up. No, they retell the whole story and just modernize it and make it dark and gritty. No, but they just modernize the original story, and it's a big tribute to that in a lot of ways. Like, Iron Man's freaking face mask drives me crazy in this Jack Kirby style. I love Jack Kirby to death, but come on, that looks bad. You good? He's distracting. He's trying to escape. Anyway, so yeah, I don't like Iron Man's faceplate in the old comic, but I really, really don't like it in the new art. It doesn't work at all. It looks terrible. So like that'll be my first big complaint about this book. I really like this book, don't get me wrong, but my major complaint for it is, one second. So, like, you were complaining about Captain America, and that made me mad. So now I came out here to fight you. So this is like a really good book, but in trying to keep so dead on with the original issue, it feels really weird sometimes. And like the art is the one thing I'm like, okay, if you're gonna change anything, change some of the art styles to make it look more modernized, and they certainly do that. But they keep, like, the design of the costume. They just do it with modern style. And, it does not work. It really, really doesn't work. Especially with Iron Man. Thor hasn't really changed that much. But Iron Man is just, like, sore thumb, sticks out awfully. But then there's some other stuff. And, like, I like the idea of keeping the beat for beat of the original story. Because, like, Cap's just kind of immersed in this world that is weird. Like, obviously, Captain America in the future, it's always going to be weird. There's that great shot in the end of the first Captain America movie where they get all their product placements in when he goes to Times Square, and he's just blown away by it. It's like, oh my god, this is so crazy. But then we get this story, and, like, it's even weirder, because it's not like he's in, a movie Marvel universe where by and large things are still fairly normal in the world. It's just superheroes. No, he's in this weird universe that have had, like, alien invasions and all this crazy stuff happen, and it's this crazy world that he's in. So that, it works on that level to keep the beat for beat of Silver Age story with the Avengers being turned into statues and stuff. But at the same time, it is a little distracting when because like what's weird about it is like here's the alien that is in the story, and like I'm not that's responsible for turning the Avengers into stone. And then if I go to the original issue, I did like that they gave you the original issue here. I go to the original issue, and here's the alien that turned them into stone, and he's all green and looks kind of like Medusa head and stuff. And so they changed the art style on him, but they didn't on Iron Man. And they changed the character design on him, but not on Iron Man. So I just don't understand that. I think that's kind of silly to do. If you're gonna change it, keep it consistent, because the writer does make it work. Who wrote this? Waid. Waid makes the whole crazy Silver Age aspect of it all work, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, the art suffers for that. And so it gets a little distracting from time to time, particularly when Iron Man's on screen. Or on panel screen, whatever. But more so, this is a story about Captain America being literally a man out of time, just how everything has changed and how it's parts of it are everything he's looked forward to, but other parts of it are just so depressing and sad, and you know, you get the whole we've lost our way thing here. And you get that in two different ways. Tony Stark shows Cap around the what museum do they say it is? This is the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. So Tony Stark shows him around this museum and shows him all these great moments from their history post World War II, and he shows him like the Captain America wing. I've often said I want to go to school in the Marvel universe, so I could learn about what Captain America did in World War II. Shows him the Captain America wing, where all these other soldiers that like took up the mantle after his disappearance fought, blah blah blah. And so you get the positive side of history from Tony Stark. But then, and so after Cap sees what he's left behind as a legacy, he decides to go and talk with the president to hand in his resignation. And the president tells him, doesn't accept, and Cap isn't allowed to go back in time. Because he has to think about the safety of reality of the timeline and everything. And so Cap is forced to stay in the future and becomes a member of the Avengers and everything. But he does so kind of reluctantly. And while he's fighting with the Avengers, he learns about, or he's able to get in contact with one of his old commanding officers who's in a nursing home now. And he spends a lot of time with it, and here's where we get the other side of American history, from someone who was there when we were, quote, great. And now we're like, oh yeah, it was all good, and like, you know, Cap saw the I Have a Dream speech, and his commanding officer has this line about, oh yeah, I was there when it happened, it was amazing, it changed a nation. Did Stark tell you what happened to the guy who gave it? So you get this really pessimistic view of what the country has become since Captain America, since World War II. And it's there's such this great sense of it. Cap's talking with the nurse that was taking care of his commanding officer after he'd passed, and he goes, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna have to find a new job, unfortunately, because of immigration laws and stuff. And it's like, is it really so bad where you're from? And she goes, there is family. We hadn't much money, but the countryside is beautiful, and I am loved there. I do miss it. And yet you're willing to scrub toilets to stay here. She says it is America. So there's still that sense of American dream that Steve Rogers is. He's blonde. He's in the army. Shut up. That Steve Rogers is having trouble grappling with, and so he's wondering if that dream is still alive. If that's still a part of this new America that he's found himself in. And it's literally like 2 pages later that we get Kang showing up. And Kang is a villain that's related to time travel and all this stuff, and he's able to easily defeat the Avengers because they're overconfident. But Cap, he won't go down. He comes in to fight harder. And Kang can tell that he's not from this era, so he sends him back to the 40s, right after the end of the war. And that's really interesting stuff. And now he has to deal with, like, now that he's been to the future, now he has to see what the past is like. And he doesn't get to have those rose-colored glasses of, oh yeah, we were great then. We had our problems, but obviously we worked through them. It's like, no, these were really big problems, and despite some of the things that have changed in the future, like for the worse, it's still a better world because of the problems that have been solved. And so, history is the story of progress in a lot of ways. So you have Cap sitting down with this man and his son at a baseball game, and they're black, and so they're not allowed to really sit in the stands, but so they're on the steps, and he encourages this little kid that loves baseball to, become a Dodger. Thank you for the lick, Danny. He encourages this little kid who loves baseball to become a Dodger, and his father tells him, that's never going to happen. Don't let white men, make fun of you like that, son. There's some really interesting stuff with the coloring in this that shows how modern Cap has become in such a short time in the future. A lot of people are colored in this, kind of muted tone or straight black and white, which is really interesting. But as it goes on, we get this sense of Cap trying everything he can, and Cap becoming disillusioned with the past the same way he was with the future. Look at that panel there. Is talking to this guy who he knew in the war about how good things are now, and he looks over and there's this guy slapping a waitress's ass. And that just shows you how much progress has occurred in ways that we don't give proper acknowledgement to. Like, we always look at the past like it was so perfect back then, but there has been some major strides that we forget about when we do that. And, you don't want a time, like Louis C.K. has this really great joke. He says, black people can't fuck around with time machines. And that's really true. Like, if you're not a white man, you can't fuck around with the time machine, because if you go too far back, it's like, fucking hang him or shut that woman up. You don't get to really screw around with a time machine like that. And so when you travel in time, things change drastically, and it's easy to forget about the strides that have been made through history. And Cap's he learns about those strides and he's impressed by those strides, but then he gets kind of cynical to it all, and he realizes, yeah, this future isn't any better. I just want to go home. I just want to be back where I was. And then when he gets back where he was, it's like, actually, no, this isn't as great as I might have thought it was. And to leave, I actually had to leave friends. Alright, camera died again. Sorry, folks. I'm gonna get a new camera. Fuck it. So anyway, Cap realizes that in order to leave and go back to the past where he wanted to be this whole book, he realizes that he had to leave the Avengers in the middle of a fight, and that's not something he's okay with. And it's just a really great story, because a problem I've always had with Captain America is his head's always been stuck in the past. He's always been this, this voice from the past of, oh, we were better back then, we're history's greatest generation in a lot of ways. And that's how his character has often been portrayed, as far as I've seen. And it's great to see someone write Captain America dealing with, no, actually, we had a lot of fucking problems. And I might not love the future. The future might be missing some of the things that made us great, but it's not completely destroyed. It's not without its merits. It's not without its success stories, and I think that's important for Cap to realize. Kang comes back to fight the Avengers because he's heard that they're the greatest heroes in history, and I think that's really telling. I like that Kang is a part of it for that reason. And like I said, Kang's a really interesting villain to use with Captain America because of the time travel aspect, and I think that was utilized really, really well. One of the other problems I had with the book, though, is some of the art's really wacky. There's this one panel that I'll put a picture up of right now, and it's just like, it is the most awkward Captain America face I've ever seen. It just looks so not good. So like that, there's stuff like that occasionally where the art just looks really freaky, and I already talked about how bad I think Iron Man looks with that old Jack Kirby style armor. Jack Kirby, you love him to death, but yeah, that looked terrible. But otherwise, it is a really great story. It's a really touching Captain America story, and there's not a lot to complain about. It's really great character arc for him where he gets to realize, the past is the past, and I refuse to be just stuck in the past like that. So I was really happy to have been able to read through this, and I find it very, very enjoyable book. I asked Steve which Captain America book I should grab that was on sale at the comic book store, and told him to grab this one because it is the best, and I gotta thank Steve for that because this is a really, really great book. But ultimately, I'm really satisfied with this story, with Captain America's character. It takes him to a really interesting place, and I was really happy to have read this, and I thought it's not only a clever story, it's also a really good story. You get those remakes essentially of comic books every so often. They end up just being kind of disappointing or kind of like blasé, but this is like a retelling, and then it builds upon that, and it's really good throughout. I loved this story. It was just a lot of fun to read. Really great character stuff for Captain America. And so if you haven't picked it up, do. It's definitely worth it because it's a really good book.
That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.